For the first time this BYU basketball season, we are pleased to welcome the former head coach, Steve Cleveland, on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Coach, welcome back to the show. It has been way too long.
Yes.
It's good to be back. Good to hear your voices.
Hey, it's good to have BYU winning big games, including what they did against Princeton. And we want to know, what are your impressions of BYU basketball after 3 exhibitions and 2 regular season wins?
You know what? It's been kind of fun to watch this development even over the summer, because I was there during the summer and watched some of these changes take place. But there's definitely some toughness and grit on the defensive end, where they're contesting shots, they're defending the dribble better. There's just overall more accountability at that end. I think also one of my impressions is shot selection and patience on offense is improved. So things they've worked on all summer, you're kind of seeing evidence of that. And they're kind of playing with a purpose, and they're a little bit undermanned, and they don't have a real deep bench, but I really like the way they're playing.
These are all good things, and this entire coaching staff put in time in the offseason, and it's early, but it's paying off so far. It seems like there's a culture change like you've talked about. And whoever originally hired Heath Royer here, that guy should be commended. That's what I say.
Yeah, I think he should get a raise.
Heath's fingerprints are all over what BYU's done. And it's not just Heath, it's Quincy, and it's Tim, and of course Dave, and it's this whole coaching staff, and Andrew May and Lee Camard. So what have you seen so far that tells you that this is going to last for a while? This is the new BYU.
Well, I think first of all, because I've been pretty close to it and watched it kind of develop and saw the steps that are being taken, it's authentic. I mean, it's a situation where they're putting the time in, they're doing these things daily, and we know the importance of practice and repetition. And they've been in a situation now for a few months where they've been able to kind of change that mindset. I don't think just defensively, but I just think in terms of being more accountable as a team overall. But my impressions and expectations of this team is that, certainly there have been some losses, and you lose a big and Eric Mika, and Nick's not going to be with them. And so those are things that you have to kind of make up for. But I like the idea that this team might be, the sum of its parts might be better than their individual players, and the guys seem to be playing together. And I think early on this team will probably benefit a little bit from lower expectations, because the fans don't really know what to expect with those losses. But certainly there have been players to replace them. You mentioned Coach Schroyer, who has a great relationship with Coach Rose, and they're good friends. And he's going to give him opportunities to do what he does. And I think most important is anytime a new coach comes in, there's always a transition. But the guys, they love Heath, and Heath has no agenda other than to help these young men become better players and a better team. So I think collectively, as you said, the whole staff has a different mindset.
No seniors on this team, only 1 freshman. What are your expectations for this team with the recent changes?
Well, I think in terms of, wins and losses, I think it's probably going to be what it's been in the past. I think you'll be a team that's going to have 20-plus wins, and they're going to be in the top 3 in the WCC. I think the matchup with St. Mary's just specifically will be better now. I think they'll through this process of defending and maybe being a little bit more patient at times. Not that they're not going to run and push the ball and get early shots when their opportunities arise, but they're more prepared to play St. Mary's today than they were a year ago. And right now, this conference championship is going to go through St. Mary's as they're the preseason pick, though I'd be really careful to underestimate Gonzaga. I think they're going to be better than a lot of people think they are. I mean, obviously people know they're always good, but they had significant losses. But just looking at box scores and looking at new personnel, I think those are still the top 2 teams in the league. But BYU is much more prepared to play St. Mary's. BYU's had success against Gonzaga, but they had very little success against St. Mary's. And so I like where they are in terms of being able to get an early win at home against a really, really good St. Mary's team. I mean, this is possible. And the pieces are put together that with this preseason, they're going to be ready for that game.
Whether it's consciously or not, I think that BYU made changes to combat St. Mary's, to defend, to be able to play against in some ways. And wouldn't it be interesting if BYU was a better matchup for St. Mary's now than they were than they are Gonzaga. Maybe you don't get that win in Spokane, but maybe you get the win in Moraga. How do you think BYU will fare against those two in league play, given what we've seen so far?
Well, I think that they're both tough games on the road. Okay, really, really tough games. And I don't think anybody would pick necessarily BYU to beat St. Mary's or Gonzaga on the road right now, and haven't really in the past. BYU's come in there against the Zags and played really well and loose and no pressure and got the better of Gonzaga.
Oh, my hair is well aware, Coach.
Yeah, I think the situation, though, at home is that BYU can beat St. Mary's and they can beat Gonzaga at home if they play well. They're not going to beat either one of these teams if they don't execute and play well and shoot the ball well. But I think there's a plan in place that when they do shoot it well and they can get to the free throw line, that they can beat those teams at home. I think the key thing, winning on the road in the WCC has been a bit of Achilles heel for BYU the last couple of years. Losing to the kind of lower-tier teams, not that they're not well-coached or good, they're not great teams, but they can't go to a Pepperdine team who's struggling and losing, or a USD. And I think they're more prepared now to go on the road and win those games. I'm not necessarily saying that the St. Mary's and Gonzaga games are plausible because they're playing different. You got to have the talent. You got to have a lot of things go your way. But I think the system is in place right now where some of the lower tier teams, BYU will not go to Pepperdine or San Diego or Santa Clara and with a mindset that they're going to go over there and win because they've got a small arena or they don't have the players or the talent that a St. Mary's Gonzaga. They won't get stuck in that again. That's not going to happen. I mean, there'll still be tough games, but I think they're more prepared to play those lower-level teams that have really been their Achilles heel the last couple of years. Stop them from being in the NCAA tournament, to be honest with you.
Amen to that, because we've done the math, and in BYU's time in the West Coast Conference, they've averaged 2.6 losses, essentially you could round to 3, a year to non-Saint Zagas, we call them, and you can join us in calling it that, Saint Zaga. Do you think that number gets down to 0 or 1, maybe?
I do.
Wow.
I do. I mean, they stay healthy, and I think the way they're playing, and listen, I think that some of the additions we'll talk about in a minute, some of the new players bring certain strengths and talents that they haven't had in the past, but certainly, when you lose Eric Mika and you lose Nick, who has the explosive ability to score 20 on any given night. But that being said, I'll go back to what I've always said about St. Mary's. I think St. Mary's has good talent, but the sum of their parts is much better than any individual player that they have. And I think that's the direction BYU is going this coming year.
Who is the best player on this BYU team right now that is looking to gel and work cohesively as a team?
I mean, after 2 games or exhibitions, you both Yoli and Elijah have played really well. I would have to say Elijah right now. His numbers are off the charts. Anytime you're shooting 50 and 60%, I think his leadership, his confidence, his ability to take big shots late in the game, his ability to get stops, he's healthy, and he can defend multiple positions. He just seems like he's letting the game come to him. He's not forcing things. He's not trying to prove anything coming off being hurt. He seems really relaxed. But certainly Yoli and TJ. Yoli's had some big nights, and both Yoli and TJ have very high ceilings in terms of what their capabilities are. But and I suspect if you ask that question week in and week out, it might change a little bit between the 3. But certainly Elijah and Yoli have been the most impressive early, but I would give the nod to Elijah at this point.
Who's the most underrated player on the team right now, Coach?
Dalton Nixon. That's an easy question for me.
Why is that?
Nixon, he's a glue guy. I mean, he does all the intangibles. He sets good screens. He takes charges. He makes the extra pass. He defends. He can defend the 1-5, and he understands the game. He's got a really, really high basketball IQ, really mature on the floor. There's some things he can't do. He may not be able to create all the shots. I think he's capable of knocking that 3 down, and I think returning from a mission, that's always one of the challenges. If he figures out a way to step out and start hitting some 3s down, hitting, at least half of them that he takes, it's going to make other teams way more difficult. He can play the 5. Offensively, he can defend the 5. He's just got a toughness and grit about him that I love, and you got to have guys like that. I mean, you got to have. And Dalton is a really, really valuable player because of all the different things he can do, but mostly because he's just really tough and he competes every possession.
Which matchup tomorrow in the UT Arlington game has your attention, Coach?
I think you go to the bigs. Kevin Hervey, Conference Player of the Year. Yoli Childs, similar, both 6'8", 6'9". Hervey had his kind of way here. A lot of them had their way here last year. But I like that matchup. I think the guard play for Arlington with Wilson and Neal, they're both capable. They played well here last year. They lost 3 starters, but they've got, I think, 8 seniors on this team, and 3 of them, I think, are fifth-year seniors. So they have experience. I don't think they're as good a team as they were. They barely beat LMU at home, but they did have a really good, like BYU, had a pretty good exhibition win against Oklahoma. So they're capable. I see BYU winning this game, and I think it'll be a good game, but I think that's the matchup, the 2 bigs. It'll be fun. They're both athletic, and both really, really can play above the rim.
Coach, we have missed this conversation, and we've missed it so much that we want to do it regularly, if you're okay with that.
Oh, that'd be great. I love being with you guys, and it's fun. It'll be a fun season to watch. I'll be in town for a week or so every month, the next 3 or 4 months, and so we'll come in, maybe do a few of these in studio as well. But I'm going to do a few of the games. But no, I love being with you, and hopefully BYU continues to improve as they have over the last 3 or 4 months.
Hey, we look forward to it. Thanks, Coach. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks.
You bet. Take care, guys.
Steve
Bye-bye.
Cleveland on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline.